The Architect's Folly, an ode to the fox, and the crane by Aesop. The Lord of Blackmere was never announced by trumpets, but instead by silence. No banner waved above his halls, no herald carried word of his presence. To any newcomer in town, his name traveled faster than wind, passed between cottages with quick, fearful glances. Masons burned his letters, carpenters refused his coins. The people of the valley learned to dodge his shadow as if it were a living thing, a specter that crawled along the earth and sank into the walls of every home. They said his halls drank the voices of those who built them. None who touched his gold prospered thereafter. Some vanished into the night, leaving hammers and chisels behind. Others returned, hollow-eyed, speaking of shapes that were wrong, of stones that whispered in the dark. Parents warned children if they were naughty, the Lord would come for them. Travelers passing the cliffs would shiver at the sight of its towers, black as drowned stone, sucking the sun into themselves. The Lord of Blackmere's reputation was that of a living boogeyman. On a windless morning, a courier arrived at Elias' threshold with a single sealed page. Heavy parchment, Blackmere's sigil pressed in dark wax. The words were brief, yet their clarity could have crushed a man with fear alone. The Lord sought an architect, one he would reward generously in gold coin. Many men burned such summonses immediately. A single glance at the sigil made them tremble. But Elias did not burn it. He folded the parchment and tucked it beneath his coat, out of sight of his wife. Hunger pressed against the walls of their failing roof, and the chill of the first winter seemed determined to crawl inside the cottage. The letter waited on the table for a day, then two. A week passed. Each morning he unfolded it, tracing the wax with hesitant fingers. The coin was not greed. He told himself it was survival. Elias knew the whispers, the fearful glances, the vanished men. But his wife's belly grew rounder by the day with their first child, and their roof sagged beneath winter's first breath. It had been 3 weeks since his last job. His hands were calloused, his pockets empty. Times were hard for everyone, but his family's need was sharper than the valley's fear. The dread in his chest felt like a stone, heavy and immovable. Still, he went. He tucked the letter in a small square beneath his coat. Each fold a small prayer, he whispered to no one. When he reached the cliff, the palace of Blackmere loomed, darker than any storm cloud, and he realized, for the first time, the true weight of the Lord's reputation. Blackmere sat on the cliff like a wound. The stone was wrong dark as rain-damp night, absorbing light into its pores. The Lord spoke seldom, and when he did, his voice was unnervingly cool, precise. Higher, narrower. I don't want too much light let into the design, he said. Elias obeyed. He spent long nights drawing by candlelight, dreaming of arches bending inward, of halls that swallowed sound. He measured angles thrice over and adjusted staircases until they whispered wrongness in his mind. By day, he oversaw laborers whose faces were pale masks, who moved as if strings pulled them. By night, he traced lines into parchment until his fingers bled. There was a poetry to the work, terrible and immaculate. He knew he was creating something no eye had yet seen, something that would be remembered long after his name was forgotten. The cruelty of Blackmere did not arrive in announcements or threats. It arrived quietly, in absences and shadows. A mason would not meet another's gaze. Another would fail to appear at the morning line, and the next day there would be no mention of him. Once, Elias found a smear of red beneath a fallen beam, no body, no question. The stain had been brushed away, as though that poor soul's existence could be erased with a rag. He asked questions, but not a single person would give him a straight answer. That's if he was lucky enough not to be ignored. At night, the palace seemed alive. Walls breathed. The new construction seemed to hold whispers that were not wind. Elias could swear he heard the scraping of claws against stone, the faintest echo of woman's wail carried in hallways that were too long, corridors that twisted against expectation. Still, he continued, driven by the promise of coin that might feed his wife, protect the child within her, and mend their home. Home, that was his focus. Finish the work and go home. When the palace was finished, it penetrated the clouds with spires like knives. Terrible and magnificent, the sight of it was one that struck dread into one's soul. Elias in the courtyard, feeling a hollow pride. He had made something unforgettable. And yet, when he dared, voice shaking, to ask of the promised coin, Lord Blackmere smiled without warmth. Payment, the Lord clucked softly as he tilted his head. You have been paid by the work itself. Rather generously, I might add. Your work has been immortalized. No eye shall ever look at such a fine thing again save mine. Elias felt his chest tighten as his skin goosebumpled with unease. He took an instinctive step back. The guards appeared at a gesture, silent and implacable. Hands pinned him to the cold stone. He pleaded not for himself, but for his wife and unborn child, but his cries were ignored. Instead, echoing off the very walls he had designed, the Lord's command was precise and cruel. Take his sight, he said. Iron scoops, rough hands, and skillful cruelty answered the command. Darkness descended in a curtain as the guards removed his eyes. The world contracted until only pain and the dim echo of stone remained. Elias screamed until his voice broke, each note bouncing off the very walls he had built, echoing back to him as a hollow mockery of his life's work. When he awoke to permanent darkness. His hands fumbled along the stone floors, tracing familiar staircases and corridors he could no longer see. He counted each step whimpering until he escaped the castle and fumbled his back to the valley. The only thought in his mind was that of returning to his wife and child. Moral of the story: expect no reward for serving the wicked. Save the ruin they always carry with them.